line of the image that traces and figures something in the image is precisely this force of the sense, and it is also through this force that actually images are not only at distance from us, but they actually make contact with us. They are touching us, not in the sense that there is a sentiment or an emotion that creates a continuity between the viewer and the image, or a sort of empathy. No, the image remains at distance, and the figuration that takes place in that presents itself in the image, it's actually a presentation, a figuration of the sense of a world, but we cannot enter in this world. We remain in front of it, on its threshold. So why the image is able to touch us is through this force of sense, as I said, but it is also because this force presents something, it from a distinct, indefinite ground, gathers this ground and presents it as a form, but at the same time it also withdraws it. And for Nancy, the image is the distinct, the obviousness of the distinct. And he says this because the distinct is actually what is set apart from the world of objects. The image is radically different from simply being there. And by being there, he refers to how things, objects, tools are in the world. And this is the mode of being of entities that we understand, for which we have a use. They are available to us. And the image is something entirely different from this. And this is why he comes to underline and to say that actually being image is a particular mode of being. The image has a particular ontological status. And because of this separation of the image, because it is a particular mode of being, it makes possible that the sense of a world exposes itself in an unmediated way in the image. Now, the sense of the world is actually the sense of our existence, and it is how we exist with each other, because being and existence for Nancy is always a radical being in a world, in the sense that we are in making sense with each other, in communicating with each other in a community. Okay, so I want now to look maybe more in detail on form. As I said, I'm interested in recovering in the notion of form the idea of a limit that doesn't limit. Every form there is a potential to present fragmentation and openness and contradiction. And the idea of force to form made me think also more chemically in a way from the interior of forms, in terms of form processes, and again on an ontological level, rather than remaining on a semantic level and looking at forms in terms of their exterior surfaces and how they come next to each other. So, because I'm interested in how every form, all forms are potentially productive, and they are engaged in an ornamental production and in an excessive proliferation. And I'm interested in this not only in visual forms, but also in conceptual, political, social forms. And I think that limit, which might be, if limit is understood as an exterior surface, its sense overlaps with that of form. But if we are to understand it as something that doesn't limit, I think both form and limit are essential for how we make artistic images, how we display something as an artistic image, and how we look at an artistic image. And I think they bring two different perspectives with each other. I think if we think only in terms of forms as shapes and fixed static forms, so when we look at an artistic image, we actually look at it in terms of decoding signs and symbols. We're reading out failures or non-failures. Whereas the perspective of a limit that doesn't limit might be a more active way of looking, in terms that we look at what it is for what it is, and we accept what bothers us in the image, the distinctness, the difference, as something that is there, and we simply engage with it, rather than trying to fix it somehow conceptually, to adjust it to a certain form. And in relation now to reason and thinking structures, I think the experience that can make them porous or make them aware of our habits is actually an interplay between a form that limits and a form that is a limit without limitation. And when I'm speaking now all the time about a limit that doesn't limit, I'm actually drawing on peras, which is an ancient Greek word for limit. And the initial use of this word referred to the limits of entities that were outside human perception, so the limit of the sky or seas or gods, and it also reflected the ancient Greek way of life that was based on peregrination and traversing of the sea, so it also included a symbolic meaning of reaching the sea's other shore. And what is also important about this meaning is that it needs to be imagined, it needs to be presupposed, it is inferred, but it cannot be deduced through causal chain, through a logical chain. I'm interested in the idea that we start in a fixed point that we are aware of, we have a consciousness, but we extend it into an extremity that initially it was sensed, it was meaningful, but it was not a conceptual meaning. And I'm also interested in Aristotle's understanding of the limit, not only as an empty exterior surface, but actually as a surface that is the projection of the interior of the form, of an interior of an entity through its outside. So the identity that is projected on an outside extremity. And the third thing is that in limit, the emphasis is not on overtaking a given determination, a given form, but more about reaching a form that is unknown, basically, conceptually. It is invisible because it didn't present it itself. The image, the artistic image, happens at the limit of, at the vanishing point, at the limit of signification. And in this sense, the artistic image is always an innovation of form. It always presents a new form. A new form that can be seen also as a limit that doesn't limit, the invisible limit, the projection, the experiment of something that was felt but was not already present, it didn't exist already. And as such, I think that the artistic image is able to interrupt our habits and to take us by surprise in relation to what we expect from meaning and from signifying discourses. And as I said already, it is a force that gathers the similar heterogeneous senses into the same, into something that, into unity, into the unity of the image, into sameness. But this sameness is a difference in sameness. So what the image presents is how something resembles itself as such, and how this resemblance as sameness is also different. It contains a difference. So in this sense, we can say that the artistic image is not only the presentation, but it is self-presentation. It exposes the mechanisms and formation of self-presentation, self-reflexivity, and self-reference. So we can say that the image is like a self engaged in a continuous tension, self-referential tension. So in a way, the image, we can say that it is a visual form, it is a shape, it is an outline, but it's not only this, it is also the projection of this limit that is not invisible of this shape. And I spoke now a lot about how Nancy understands images and about the insecurity, the existential insecurity of being an image. But I think this is something that we can see also in our everyday understanding with images, not only in our practices, but also the way we encounter images basically everywhere, because they are both, I think images are actually both in a complete merging with the world of objects, and also in a complete isolation with the world of objects. There is no ontological difference anymore between making and displaying artistic images. That is an artistic image is not only an artistic image, it is actually also a commodity. It can be also, it can become also a decorative image, so that there is no fixed copy. Copies are not fixed as copies, originals are not fixed as originals, images are not static, they are in a continuous transformation. So being image shares an ontological insecure position, however this precariousness is productive and creative, and it implies an opening and a becoming. And if I am to think of artistic images as a divided self, but a divided self understood from an existential position, as a self that is in an extreme status of consciousness, of anxiety, of alienation, that provoke a loss of contact with reality, and also an inability to think rationally, then I can also try to think about the different methods of presentation and compositional structures between the image and the world, as complex mechanisms employed by a divided self to cope with this existential precariousness. Okay, and I will end with a poetic image of the figure of the double within the artist, the subjective existence of the artist and its persona.